Hey guys, welcome back out in the garage. What I want to talk about today is cam bearings. Okay, I got two blocks setting up here. I'm not going to knock any cam bearings in today in this video. I just want to kind of talk about them a little bit. This is a quarter groove. Okay, here's your bleed hole for the oil, of course. And then as I turn it, it should show in there, hopefully, you can see a groove, okay? And I keep turning it, and then the groove will run out, okay? And then it's back to full footprint here, okay? Now, I just want to talk, this is what I run, okay? I run these in my builds. But what I'll talk about is how I like to set them up and the reason why I do it the way I do it, okay? Because you can actually put it in, if you didn't want to use the groove, but you had a groove, you can put them in the standard way, okay? Let's just say, which would be basically in running mode like this engine's facing this way, it would just be the hole would be pointing down, okay? Or you can actually have the hole at 9 o'clock or at 3 o'clock, okay? So, or anything in between there, if you just wanted to twist, you could move that hole just out of the way a little bit if you wanted to with the quarter groove. If it was a full groove, then of course you can 360 degrees, and you can put that hole anywhere you want. Okay. Now, with that said, I like to put them in at 3 o'clock, okay? So when it's in running mode like this block sitting up this way, I like the hole to be right here, okay, at 3 o'clock. Now, the whole reasoning for moving this hole is because if you think about it, the hole is down. Here's the hole in the bottom. Cam is in here, okay, push rods, lifters, push rods, valve spring pressure. All this stuff now is pushing down on the cam, and it's right on top of that hole right there where you have most of your pressure on the cam, or in this vicinity right here, okay, anywhere in here. So you want to get as much surface as you can there. So by moving it, you'll have more flat surface, okay? They call that oil wedging or pinch point. There's a lot of different little names guys have when you have the hole in the standard area, okay? So if you can move that, that'd be ideal, because now here's why I like the 3 o'clock. So if I was to move this, let's say I drove these in, this block here, okay, this is upside down because most shops knock in cam bearings with the block upside down. That way you can reach in here like this and put the tool in and drive them in, okay? With a sitting like this, you would have to reach underneath here, and it's just kind of a pain, really. So this is how you need to set it. So keep that in mind when you're thinking of 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, whatever, because this is 3 o'clock. Okay, there's the hole. To me, the way I look at it, and people might look at this all completely different. But I try to do, you'll notice with some of my videos, I always talk about in running mode and stuff. I always say that a lot. That's because there's different, when you're assembling the motor, you're assembling a lot of it upside down, putting the crank in and stuff. Guys have called this, the main caps, this will be the bottom. So if you've seen a bearing that said bottom bearing, this is the bottom, this is the top. But if you have the block upside down, some guys get confused and think this would be the top. But anyway, that's I'm off topic, ain't I? So remember, so in running mode, I like the bleed hole to be at 3 o'clock. So this is going to be 12 o'clock. This is the top. 12, 3, 6, 9. Now, so when you put this in, if you put this one in here at 3 o'clock, thinking that this is 12, 3, 6, 9, okay? That means you're now at 9 o'clock when you have it in running mode, okay? Now, something you gotta watch for on the quarter groove that I do, if you can only go, so if I wanna put this at 3 o'clock, let's say like that, this is running mode in 3 o'clock, I gotta make sure that that groove is over here lined up with the oil hole, okay, in the block, the oil hole. Because I can also flip this like this, I'll still be at 3 o'clock, but the oil hole's blocked because my groove is up here. So you got to pay attention to make sure that the groove is in the oil galley, okay? The oil galley. A full groove bearing, which is simple, okay? It's non-headache. You can't make that mistake. You can put it in anywhere you want because it's a full groove. Okay, I just don't prefer full groove because I try to keep as much footprint as I can. Okay, I want as much footprint as I can. So I only need a quarter of a groove to move that to 3 o'clock. So I know I'm kind of talking repeatedly, let's say, I keep saying 3 o'clock. It's only because I want to make sure you guys know if you use one of my quarter grooves to make sure the groove here is with your oil and the hole is at 3 o'clock. Now when the cam is putting all this pressure on, the you have clearance. So you're gonna have clearance except for down here. So when it shoots the oil through the bleed hole, you actually have a little more, maybe a little more clearance because it's pushing down and kind of opening that a little bit, okay? Now, also, by having it at 3 o'clock in running mode, okay, this is where it gets kind of confusing and maybe some may not see this. The oil hits my groove right here, and of course it has to shoot oil through. So now the oil's shooting through the bleed hole. Come on, Billy, see if I can do this. Poop, just like that. Okay, it's shooting through the bleed hole. Now, when it shoots through the bleed hole, the cam rotates clockwise. So now it's wiping that oil that just shot in. That new oil is now going down here where the pinch point or the oil wedge or where the factory or where the hole would have been, okay? See, because it rotates this way. If you have it in at 9 o'clock, it's got clearance there also. When it shoots the oil into that, it's wiping the oil up like this, then down. So basically, I want my oil to wipe first in this loaded area. We'll call that the loaded area. So when it's turning clockwise like this, and my oil shoots through this hole, I want it to wipe. I want it to already get right to that. I don't want to fill all this cavity up and then the tight spot, fill all this cavity. Okay, because I want the new oil to already hit here. That's why I like it at 3 o'clock, okay? I believe I don't have a full groove bearing, but I've had guys bring them and I've installed them because they are using that bearing, okay? Now, and I've had a couple blocks come in that already have the full groove bearings in it, but they were at 9 o'clock, okay? So when I knocked them in so that they would be at 3 o'clock, like I like these. But I think what happened was they knocked them in at 3 o'clock upside down. And then when they turned it over, it was at 9 o'clock. Now that might be the way they want it done by the manufacturer. I don't know. I do remember seeing the box said something about 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock, somewhere in that area. Okay, but are they talking this way or this way? Is this your new 12 o'clock or is this the real 12 o'clock? See, that's something that might need to be cleared up if you ever buy a full groove bearing, you know, when I talk to them, is that with the block upside down or in running mode? I do everything in running mode. You'll notice that. I wish I never would have lost my old YouTube, because I had a lot of videos on there. Not like some people have, but I had a lot of videos on there, and I talked a lot of running mode. And a lot of people just do everything without it, with just sitting like this, and they're trying to explain stuff. You have to try to explain to it in a running mode. So, I say this is 3 o'clock is like this, okay, with the hole on this side. I'm gonna say midnight, 12 o'clock or noon is straight up, all right? So, but I stress, if you do get a set of the quarter groove, or you make your own quarter groove or whatever, make sure that groove is where the oil comes up through the galley here, okay? Comes up, so that it will shoot in at 3 and wipe, because the cam turns clockwise. So that way it wipes it, okay? Right away, instead of filling all this out and wipe. So, but maybe I don't know, it's up to you. Like I say, you can put these at 9 o'clock if you prefer, but if you do, flip it over, okay? So basically, here's 3 o'clock, here's the groove. If you turn this to 9 o'clock, make sure you still have the groove on the bottom, because you can turn it like this and have it, the groove is on top. Same with this way. So just remember, when you're using only a quarter or a half groove or whatever, make sure that groove is always down when you flip these. Okay, you gotta watch how you flip them. So, and that's not really a bad deal. I made it sound like it's gonna be a real headache, but it's not. You'll know. Or you can even put a little dot, a little mark or something right here, so you know that's where your groove is, and then you go to town. So that's how I do it. Now, with what order they go in, of course, all your cam bearings has a little number on it. So when you have a box, say you bought you a set of new cam bearings, they always have, what number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the number on the bearing, okay? So if you looked at the bearing and it says SH511, that goes into number 2, okay? And if it said 514, that goes into number 5. So that part there is the same with the groove bearings. That doesn't change, unless they put them in a whole different box. And if they did, you can just number it 1 through 5 with a Sharpie or something if you groove them, and then you just kind of cint them or put them in some other kind of container or whatever. You can do it like that to keep track of it. Now, what I want to talk about is the number one bearing itself, okay? Like this number 1 bearing right here. I don't groove the number 1 bearing on all applications, only on certain ones. I'm losing air pressure. Man, I'm getting that heavy. My seat went down. Okay. This one isn't grooved at all. This is a number 1 bearing. Number 1 bearing has 2 bleed holes, okay? Because on the Ford 335s, or on the Ford blocks, a lot of them, they oil in 2 spots. They oil the cam, but then the other hole actually oils where this little shaft part sits in the block. It puts oil on that, okay? But here's my deal. So what I did was, I use what I call now a 3/4. I don't use a quarter groove, I use a 3/4 groove if I use it on the front bearing that has 2 holes like that. So I just kind of drew this black line, but you can see it starts from that bleed hole and it goes around and stops at that bleed hole, okay? If it had a groove. That way I can move this same way and it would oil. But instead of moving it like 3 o'clock and all that stuff like that, I like to have it sitting where the grooves are basically on top, okay? So it would have to sit like that. So now when the oil comes through, it's still, basically this is now at, what, let's say this is 12, okay, 1 and 11, okay? But you won't see probably too many 3/4 grooves that I would send to somebody, unless it's only a certain applications I would do that to. And so normally I would just do 2 through 5 with the 1/4 groove and leave this alone, okay? But when you move it, your cam, okay, I forgot, I kind of left this part out. I don't know if I can even, let's see if you can see it. The bearing already has a groove in there. Can you see it? That's factory groove. That's the groove, those two. That way when the oil comes in, it oils the cam and then it moves over and it goes through here and it oils that little shaft I was just showing you on the back of that distributor, okay? The second hole is oiling this. And then it sprays out. There's another little spot that even sprays out, okay? Now, here's the reason why I don't do a full groove. 2 incidents already that was brought to my attention, and I actually got to see it, okay? But that was only 2 out of the thousands and thousands of probably full groove bearings that are in blocks out there. It got the area that has that groove right there, the full groove has a groove back here. There was a little piece missing, okay? And on the other one, there was like, you can see like cracked, like it's cracked. It's because I think it just gets paper thin right there. And you gotta remember, if you move these around, depending on where you move it, now say you move it on the clearance side or whatever you're doing, camshafts are not just perfect, you know, they're not gonna stay perfect. They're gonna move around, flex around just like your crankshaft does. And I'm thinking it kind of almost like getting a piece of wire and go like this, you know, and it bends or cracks or whatever. And I think that's kind of like what's happening there. So I don't do any grooving here. I just groove from hole to hole and it still oils. So when you move this, because of that inside groove, that is basically my outside. That's the rest of my outside groove, let's say. It's just going on the outside, going through the hole, going on this side, and then going right back out. See what I'm saying? Plus, when the oil's hitting the groove, it can actually go both ways. No one says that it's gonna always travel one way, okay? So, there's a lot of talk over cam bearings, huh? I didn't realize that video was gonna be that long, but I just want to make sure I made a lot of, you know, that I made it clear, okay? And like saying, if you don't understand all this, you might say, well, that sounds like a whole bunch of nonsense, which is fine, and I'm okay with that. But it works, okay? Because that's how I run them, okay? I run them like that. So that way I don't have to run these. I don't run the. We used to call them the Roush oil restrictors, okay? That are threaded into the mains right here in the saddles. That restricts the oil to the cam bearing, so it doesn't have so much on the cam, I should say, and puts more to the main. Don't need to use those no more if you have a groove bearing, okay? Because it's a restrictor as well. Because the oil is hitting here, it's moving over, and that's the only way it can play, is right here. Okay, so it actually acts as a kind of a restrictor as well, okay? I can't say about the full groove. Some guys say it's a restrictor and some guys say it's not, because it's full groove, so you always got oil going around it. I don't know how it works as a restrictor, but I'm not gonna say. So anyway, but you see my point on that. So here it can't go this way, it can only go this way, period. Okay. So now, the bad part. Okay, now this is where you gotta kind of have your eyeballs or your glasses like these. You really gotta watch for. Okay, and this is a video I showed on my last YouTube, and I remember making the video, and I remember how it turned out, and I remember some of the talk, but you got to check the bores. You got to really check the bores on your cam tunnel. And the reason why, if there's any flaws, any scratches, or where maybe the blade dragged from the factory, okay, dragged out off of those journals, okay, the bores of the journals there of the cam tunnel, or anything happened, okay, any flaws, then these grooves play hell with you, because now it's got a place to bleed off. So when I showed a block, it was just a block I had, and it had a lot of mess inside of the journals. And we put a full groove bearing in there, okay? And some of you might have seen it on, some of you, I don't have very many subscribers on this YouTube channel here, but some of you might have seen it if you had the old one. The full groove bearing, I drove it in, we pressurized it. Okay, so as if it was in running mode, we put pressure, okay? And it actually bled out the sides of the bearing. Okay, that's because there's oil behind the bearing, which normally we don't, it sounds weird. Why would you want oil on the backside of your bearing, right? So the oil's there's so much oil, and then you got pressure, whatever your pressure is. So it's got pressure, and it was actually coming out the sides, and basically it's just blowing oil into your windage, or just another leak you just made for your block, okay? Because all blocks have leaks. Not just these Clevelands, but they all got leaks, okay? There's leaks, okay? But you just added, but you would never know, because once it's all buckled up, it's in your, whatever your vehicle is, you'll never know that oil is actually coming out of the side. So when I showed that video, I even said on the video, I won't even put my quarter groove in that block. That's how bad that block was, because it was just coming out. So then, instead of putting a quarter groove in, because I already told everybody I'm not going to put a quarter groove in this block to even show it, after seeing what a full groove did, I did drive in a standard non-grooved, and it didn't even, there was nothing, okay? There was nothing. I slid the cam in it so it had pressure and everything. Nothing came out the sides at all, okay? But it did with the full groove, and I didn't try my quarter groove, but I said on the video, I won't even use my quarter groove, because at least that much of it is gonna have oil behind the bearing, and I can have the same issue, okay? So that's something you gotta look for. With that said, I do want to show this. I kind of cleaned out these journals. This is actually a factory deal, okay? Let me see if let me stand this up. Turn this around. I don't know if the camera, it's kind of dark in here. I don't know if the camera's going to see it or not. I do have my flashlight. Let me move this up here. Let me see. I don't know. See those? This isn't bad up here, but you kind of see well, maybe that light is actually hurting me. But you can kind of see, oh, you know what? Okay, you can kind of see the little lines on there. They're not real bad. That's just from the machining. But there was one. I gotta get a light in there somehow. Yeah, look at that one there. See how rough that is? And I cleaned these out. That's actually from the factory though. That's a factory, some kind of not sure how they do their machine. There, you can see it there. See that? Now let's go to this one above it. Where am I at? There. See that? I don't know how if the camera will get it right, but see how nasty that is? And I actually ran through there, and that didn't. That's what didn't. Yeah, you can kind of see it there now. See all those little X's and stuff. That's all from the factory though. But they're not all like that on blocks. So that's one thing I look for. I'm way down here at this bottom bearing. Yeah, I was trying to zoom in, but it didn't. The fifth bearing down there don't look too bad. But this one here is nasty. Oh, there you go. See that? I'm gonna go up to this one. Look at that one. There, okay, there it is. That's even the best. That's the best picture yet. That's a factory tool that did that. See how it's made? Look at that big old radius, how nasty that thing looks on the top. But see, when you have a block that has stuff like that, now the top one here, see, it isn't too bad. You can kind of see the lines, but they're not real deep. But see how nasty that one is? How nasty that one is? How nasty that one is? So, but then that one there isn't as bad. Okay. All right, I know it was a little bit longer than I wanted. I thought I was gonna do like a 10-minute video just talking about these bearings, but I got kind of deep into it, didn't I? And this seat, man, it's diet time for me. If it can't even hold me up, here I go, I'm sinking. Okay, so I wanted to show us all this kind of stuff. So even my quarter groove bearing here, I wouldn't run in this block. Okay, as you can see, I wouldn't trust it, and you can see why a full groove would actually could have a good chance of leaking, because it's got oil around the whole bearing. Okay, the whole bearing's got oil so around it instead of just a quarter of the groove. So, but yeah, so a standard bearing for sure in this block. Okay, I just that's my thinking. Okay, so look at those. Look at because a lot of shops don't look at that stuff and they just drive them in. And I've seen stuff where it wasn't factory like that. It was actually where they misused the tool or used the wrong one or whatever and gouged and stuff. And if you get stuff like that, they're gonna leak if you have a groove that's gonna be sitting over that spot. Okay, so anyway, I don't know. That's my video for today though. It's all about cam bearings, okay? So at least I learned something on this block. This is the block that we've had the main cap issue with, and now we got cam tunnel nastiness in there, okay? But yeah, but not a big issue. We'll just knock it. This here is actually just a hot street, and standard cam bearings will be fine putting it in there, okay? So anyway, that's my deal, and I hope I explained all that to where you can understand it. Anyway, so as always, there'll be another one coming up. Thanks, guys. Take care.